Gautam Da is here.
Gautam Da is having problems in logging in. I'll just call him again.
Topic for today is social communication, therapeutic tools in autism. We were doing this series on autism, and I think 2 lectures are still left, so we'll cover it up in the later half of next month. Next slide, please. Handing over the session to Professor Dr. Tufan Pati sir. Sir, over to you. Please take it up.
Thank you, Dr. Alim. Thank you very much. I won't waste time in introducing ourselves. So, just formally, I have to introduce Dr. Alim Siddiqui, the moderator, and Dr. Amrit Parjoshi, the moderator. Both are professor of psychiatry, respectively in Lucknow and Bhubaneswar. Both are young, vibrant leaders of IPS and future of IPS. Welcome them all. And next slide, please. Next one. Dr. Sudhir Bhave, my dear friend, he was doing Riyaz before joining. He is Professor Department of Psychiatry, NKP Salvi Institute of Medical College, Nagpur. He has 34 years of teaching experience, postgraduate guide and examiner for MD. Topped almost all exam in his school and college years. National Executive Committee member of IPS. Winner of LP Shah Racing Award, IPS Region, Nagpur Bhushan Award, etc. Published 26 papers in index journals and authored several book chapters. Edited the first book in the world on cyber psychiatry for the Indian Psychiatric Society. An acclaimed light musical vocalist, cut an album of his songs in 2010. Welcome, Dr. Sudhir. Next slide, please. Dr. Lokesh Babu from Tumkur. He is here chairing along with Dr. Sudhir Bhave. He is a neuropsychiatrist and his excellence is in personality development coach and mentor. Work experience, medical director Sneha Mano Vikas Kendra, president of Sejal New Life Foundation, NGO which works for mental health of the society. Director Annie Besant Convent Trust Bangalore, runs daycare center, Manasadhara Daycare Center. Director Smiles in Miles Healthcare Tourism Company. Director of SIM Events, Event Organizing Company Bangalore. Felicitated by various institutions and organizations for the work done in mental health. Welcome, Dr. Lokesh. Welcome, Dr. Sudhir Bhave. From now onwards, the meeting will be handed over to you, but I take this opportunity to welcome to our guest, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri, who is a dear friend of First Amusing since the very outset, and very good well-wisher of all of us, and to be exact, to all the children in the country. He has been from immense, now he is leading Sambad, the revolution called Sambad. Welcome, Dr. Shekhar sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there. Before he comes, I will tell a few things about. He had been the president of Indian Psychiatric Society, and his year has been a very eventful year. Now he is also president of SARC Psychiatric Federation, which will be going to have the annual conference in Kathmandu very shortly. He is the editor of Indian Association of Private Psychiatry, and he is well known, jovial, and dear to all. With this, I hand over the further proceedings to the chairpersons with the aid of Dr. Alim Siddiqui and Amrit Parjoshi. So one of the chairpersons will introduce Dr. Radhika Tanshale, and the other chairperson will introduce the topic. Over to you, Dr. Bhave and Dr. Lokesh.
Right. Thank you. So Lokesh, can I introduce her? I know her since 20 years. Yeah, so I think I'll do that. Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Radhika today. I mean, as I said, I have known Radhika for almost 4 decades, since the time after passing her MPhil from CIP Ranchi. She was working in my department of psychiatry in Nagpur. She is a clinical psychologist, director and founder of Social Space Community. She worked for 15 years in the area of autism. That's a lot. And she's based in Brisbane, Australia for the last 13 years. She's an alumnus, as I said, of Central Institute of Psychiatry, Kanke, and completed her doctoral research at the University of Queensland in 2021. Her research evaluated a yoga-based program incorporating third-wave CBT components developed by her for children on the autism spectrum and the program's effect on self-regulation. So I think we have a speaker who has developed programs for autism of her own, and I think that's a very valued thing for us with her as a faculty today. She recognizes the importance of social connections and a sense of belonging on psychosocial well-being and started social space community. And this social space community provides social and recreational workshops for neurodivergent young individuals and their families. Through the various workshops, the aim is to support social and community participation and facilitate positive social connection. Now, having said those many words in the formal part of the biodata, let me just add one or two lines that she was working in my department of psychiatry at Nagpur. And I would state very clearly that she is perhaps one of the best clinical psychologists I ever came across. I mean, the clarity in her thinking and the way she would conceptualize a case, the way she would discuss with her colleagues. I think all those were remarkable. And it was a sad moment for us when she left Nagpur for going to USA at that time. But Radhika, it's a great thing to have you back again today. So welcome, hearty welcome to you. Dr. Lokesh, would you like to say something?
No, sir, we can continue.
Okay. So in that case, Radhika, over to you.
Yeah. So, do we launch the channel now, Tufan sir?
Gautam sir is just coming in. Sekhar sir can speak few words about our Thursday musings, sir.
Thank you very much, Amrit. Friends, something extraordinary happened during the start of the COVID pandemic. The Odisha State Branch of the Indian Psychiatric Society, with this effective and efficient triumvirate of Tufan Pati, Amrit Patjoshi and Aleem Siddiqui, got together to start what was then intended to be a weekly program, essentially on therapeutics in psychiatry. It grew far beyond that to provide one of the most robust and vibrant platforms for a dialogue on various aspects of mental health practice. That personally, it has been a privilege for me to have done at least about 10 or 11 of the Thursday musings, and may I dare say to have done about 9 to 10% of Thursday musings is a great privilege, particularly to be associated with this initiative. Thursday musings with the almost touching 45,000, soon to be 50,000 people who have actually watched the 130 odd episodes, creates a platform to really work on the academic and scholarship aspects of the practice of child mental health using an expanded framework. And it's a matter of great honor and pride that today we recognize the launch of the Thursday Musings YouTube channel, so that all the episodes that have been done so far are available for future generations, perhaps in posterity, for people to watch, learn, and refresh the kind of diversity of subjects that have been covered. So I take this opportunity to share this platform with my good friend Gautam Saha, who has recently completed one of the most remarkable conferences, the conference of the World Psychiatric Association regional conference, and to share a platform with Gautam Da to welcome this initiative of the Thursday Musings YouTube channel. So Tufan Da, Amrit and Aleem Bhai, Amrit and Aleem are brothers, though they keep ribbing each other, but they are the best of friends and the closest of brothers in this initiative. My heartiest congratulations on this initiative, and over to you for the rest of the session. Well done and power to you.
Thank you, sir. Gautam sir.
Thank you, sir. Gautam sir.
Team Thursday Musings. I welcome everyone on this August occasion. I have taken the privilege of introducing a guest of honor, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri and Dr. Gautam Shah in absence. Of course, he does not need any introduction. We are one short of the 150th episode, and it is an event today. It is a landmark day today. You are launching the YouTube channel so that anything happening on Thursday Musings from day one till date will be available for everyone. And let me ask Dr. Gautam Shah, our guest of honor, to say a few words, and then we'll run through the YouTube lunch. And then we'll proceed on to the subsequent program of today. Dr. Gautam, please.
Thank you, Dada. Dr. Tufanpati. It's really great honor for me to be associated with such a two dynamic brothers, Dr. Amrit and Dr. Alim, under the guidance of our one of the most senior Dada, Dr. Tufanpati, have done a wonderful job. It is in fact, it can be their contribution to the psychiatry should be included in the history of Indian psychiatry, because the long way they have done, they are contributing in the science like anything for last, I think, in the 150 episodes. And I am really proud to be associated with this. And it was a grand success too, if you identify their quality of presentation, choosing of the subjects, speakers, as well as the chairpersons, all are really fantastic. So I wish all the best in the future also. I want you to continue this endeavor for a long time, because you know that not only students, PGTs, but the senior psychiatrists like us also, so much enriched by all the episodes. And now it is YouTube, which is the extra advantages. If I miss any live program, we can at least later on we can see this program and we can listen, and we can be enlightened by the esteemed speakers and contribution of the chairpersons. It's my proud privilege to be with Dr. Shekhar Seshadri Dada with us as a guest of honor. And also I am seeing that we have the chairperson, Dr. Sudhir Bhave, my elder brother, and also my bro, Dr. Lokesh Babu. And today with us, Dr. Radhika, as one of the great speakers. I know that he will do justice, and she will definitely enlighten us today. Thank you so much again, my two bro, Amrit and Alim, and also my Dada, Dr. Tufanpati. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. If you allow, we can go to the lamp lighting. Shreya, please.
Yes, please.
So Gautam and thank you, Gautam sir. Thank you, Shekhar sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the actual channel that we have. We have all the episodes on it now. So this is one of the episodes of Shekhar sir. So you can all go and visit this channel.
Support advocacy.
I hope it is visible and audible.
Interventions for children.
Yeah.
It's a national initiative and integrated
More
resource.
audible.
mental health and psychosocial care under the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare,
So
Government of India.
thank you so much. Thank you
And
so
we
much.
work in four
Gautam da,
verticals.
Shekhar sir, Tufan sir, Amrit.
Mental health, education, policy and law.
We'll start with the academics now. Thank you.
Now over to the chairpersons.
Over to
continue
Radhika to start the session.
Dr. Lokesh and Dr. Bhave, please take over.
Yes, sir.
We are eagerly waiting to listen to Dr. Radhika. Please take over.
So, Radhika, you could start.
So can you all hear me?
Yeah, loud.
So thank you, everyone. That was really beautiful ceremony, and congratulations to Thursday Musings. So my topic is social and emotional communication and therapeutic approaches in autism. So this is part 2. I presented 2 weeks ago. Just a schedule. So we'll do some pre-reflection questions as I always do. So I'll give you all some questions to read. Just think about it for a couple of minutes. You don't have to answer, you don't have to write anything, but just kind of reflect. And then we'll do a review, a little quick review of what we did last time to kind of, immerse into social emotional communication. We'll talk about management and neuro-affirming approaches. Some resources, I'll put them throughout the slides, and then post-reflection questions. I'll ask the same questions again, and if you all learn something from it. So the questions are, what is your understanding of social emotional communication? What do you think is the role of emotions in communication? And this is with regards to individuals on the autism spectrum. What approaches can you think of to support social emotional communication goals for our autistic clients? And what resources do you use in your clinic? So I'll just give you all a couple of minutes to kind of think about this. The last time I was talking about autism, that autism is a neurological difference. It's not a deficit. It's just a different way of perceiving, sensing, relating to the world. And one of the things in autism is that, Dr. Tony Attwood and Carol Gray, they talked about autism and strengths, and they talked about discovering the ASPE criteria. And they talked about autism in terms of, talents, like many of the autistic individuals will have some talent either in art or music or maybe math or coding. They talked about qualities. Autistic individuals have excellent memory. You'll always hear sometimes a parent say, once you go a certain way, my child always remembers the direction. Often visual thinkers think in pictures, logical thinking, converse very well with adults. They pay, significant attention to detail, acute hearing, very loyal friends, caring, honest, and intelligent, curious. And one of the things is to understand that, there's a potential to help autistic individuals, understand the neurotypical world, to learn the social rules that the neurotypicals have created. And often the rules are very hidden. Social rules are never, explicitly mentioned. And you're kind of giving guidance on social perspective. But what you do is you use the strengths to kind of help, with the social understanding and social communication. And you're creating opportunities for that. The second thing which I didn't mention last time, which was that, we don't talk about high functioning or low functioning autism. We don't talk about more autistic or less autistic. But we talk with DSM-5, one of the things they mention is the level of support. So, level 1 support for social communication behaviors or restricted repetitive behaviors, or level 2 support, and level 3 means more, more one-on-one support, and more often the frequency is higher. So today I'll be using the language of level of support. I also touched upon associated difficulties in autism. And, one of the things that I really focused on was difficulties in emotion regulation, alexithymia, or the inability or the lack of that emotional library. I focused a lot on anxiety and how anxiety plays a role along with executive functioning to kind of, all these associated difficulties kind of impact the self-regulatory competence. So coming to today's session, I would like to say that, when I talk about anxiety, we always, in a top-down model, we understand that if there's an incident, we have thoughts related to it. Based on the thoughts, there is a certain emotion, and we have behavior. So it's a the triangle model that we have. But often what we don't look into is the physiology. So say, for example, you're walking down the road, you're just walking and suddenly you hear this loud bang and a loud crash. You have a startle, jump reflex. You turn around and you see that, there was some construction work going on and something fell. Now, the thought in your head is, oh, that's fine. I'm okay. I'm safe. It was just something that fell. The emotion, which was initially of this pride, seems to, you kind of understand where that came from. And your behavior might be that you start walking again, towards your destination. But physiologically, it does take a little while to come back to that, that state of, that homeostasis. Somewhere that, that sense in our bodies, like, you have been alerted. There has been that, maybe heart rate has increased. And so one of the things that we need to understand is that when we talk about physiology, it has a big part because we know that anxiety really changes the presentation of autism. And I feel that anxiety kind of is one of the ways that we can identify how autism presents, and to work on not just anxiety, but emotion dysregulation. And what behaviors we might see in terms of their physiology is either the fight or the flight, or, the shutdown or the freeze. So you see kind of the autonomic nervous system playing here. And, there's a study by Angela Scarpa and Stephen Porges, and they've written an article. And one of the things they mention is that autism is associated with chronic autonomic nervous system hyperarousal. And that chronic nervous system hyperarousal can also, there is a relationship between behavioral and emotional difficulties. So we need to remember this physiological model when we are, working on social emotional communication. So you might say, why is Radhika focusing on emotion regulation when we're talking about social communication? One of the things we need to understand is that in case, if I am overwhelmed, if I am stressed, if I'm coming from a place of, anxiety, I won't be able to, maybe focus on my work. I won't be able to engage in, things that I really like to do. Maybe my sleep will get affected. I won't be able to plan better or, organize things. And then not only that, but when I am not able to regulate my own emotions, emotions do play a role in social communication. So there is no social communication without emotions. It's social emotional communication. It's going to affect the way I relate with, others around me, maybe going to a restaurant, maybe going to a mall. So working on emotional goals first is quite a logical thing to do. So what I feel is important is that we need to create a neuro-affirming approach. That is an approach where we are talking on the same radio frequency, the same, I mean, the neurotypicals and the autistic individuals need to kind of have a shared vocabulary. When there is shared vocabulary, we are able to kind of create, that opportunity for social understanding, for social emotional communication. So what do you do first? The first thing that we can offer as clinicians is a sense of safety. Remember, when we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, we really want to bring in the sense of safety. How do we bring sense of safety? So we know that co-regulation always precedes self-regulation. So when the adult, or the parent or the caregiver or the professional, relates to the child, or the individual, and kind of is supportive, you're kind of in a calm state. They're offering the sense cues of safety. The second one is the voice. As we know that our middle ear is connected to a vagus nerve. So the prosody or the melody in the voice also helps to bring about, that sense of safety, a sense of, ease. Bringing in some sensory tools, or some special interest toys can also help to kind of bring this, again, we are kind of creating an environment to assist with social emotional communication. And one of the important things that we know that autistic individuals really like predictability, and that can be very helpful as well. So, we're just going to watch this little video and just watch this lady who's sitting there as the train approaches. She's just sitting there. And when the train approaches, she gets up. She knows exactly where the bogie is going to stop, where the door is going to open. She didn't get up before. So that predictability helps her. There's no stress in her movement. She's just, very calmly, she gets up. So say, for example, I have to catch the Howrah Express. And I always know that when I catch the Howrah Express, the Howrah Express always comes on platform number 1. I go to platform number 1 and I know that my AC3 tires and so, it's going to come here. Still, I ask someone at the railway station and I'm waiting there. Suddenly there's an announcement to say that, the train is running late by 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, there's an announcement to say, now the train is going to arrive at platform number 12. Now I have to pick up my bags, run across, go up the stairs, try to see where is platform number 12, how far is it, gauge it, run down, to platform number 12. Now try to find the AC tire because I've never, boarded the train from, platform number 12. And you can see that as I'm saying this, there is a sense of arousal. There's a sense of, kind of that heart rate racing. And because that predictability, what I knew usually happens has changed. And therefore, predictability brings about the sense of control. And when there's a sense of control, there's less anxiety. So what we're trying to do is create a more predictable environment. So as we know that for autistic individuals, we use a lot of schedules, to know what's going to happen, first, then later. So first brush your teeth, then, maybe read a book and then go to bed. Or we may have, and especially for children requiring or individuals requiring level 3 support, we have it maybe much more like, we'll have a start box and a finish box to exactly know what is going to happen. Okay, when there is predictability, I am more inclined to be present to whatever, the activity or the interaction is. Again, having signs which are, very familiar signs can also help. The other thing is that the expectations need to be very clearly stated. So, when you go to a team meeting, these rules are never set. Like show up on time, follow the agenda, record action items, don't extend the meeting, come prepared, be present. It's never mentioned. And these are all in thought bubbles. So this is something that is expected, but it's hidden. So most of the rules, most of the social rules created by neurotypicals are hidden. It's hidden meaning. And you have to kind of try and understand. When nobody tells you this, you kind of just, follow everyone and go, oh, she arrives on time, so I better arrive on time. Or, everybody's taking down notes, so I better arrive with a pen and a notepad and I take down notes. Being present, oh, when boss is talking, I need to be quiet. Things like that. So it's about making those expectations really clear, and, talking about it rather than keeping them hidden. One thing that I always, thing that we really need to consider when we are working with autistic individuals is transitioning and the effect that it has. And transitioning is, say, for example, we talk about transitioning. Oh, it's not just homeschool home. Transitioning is I wake up, I get ready. Then my mom says, oh, the auto has come. So I have to leave from my house into my, near the front door. That's transition 1. Then I get into the auto, which is transition 2. Now I'm sitting in the auto and there are kids, near me. There is all these sounds coming, blaring sounds. And then I have to go to school. Then I have to get out of the auto, so another transition from the, getting out of the auto to the school, door, from the school door into the classroom. From the classroom, I go and then teacher says, okay, now, we have to start with assembly, a prayer, and, start. That is a lot of transitioning. And transitioning is not a physical thing. It's not from destination A to destination B. When we're talking about transitioning, we actually mean transitioning, cognitively. So say, for example, if I know that I have to go to work by 9 a.m., 6 o'clock in the morning when I wake up, I know I'm thinking about my work. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. I think about getting ready for work. Even when I'm on the bus, I'm thinking about work. So mentally, I've already transitioned. So when I go into work, it's much more easier for me to kind of just start, right? Having said that, all of us have these little transitioning tools or transitioning things that we do to kind of help us start the day. Say, for example, most of us will go into work and we may say hi to some, one of our colleagues, or we may go into work with and have a cup of tea, or we may go to work and maybe just, look outside the window. So we do some things which we not realize, but these are our transitional objects. So what I usually used to recommend is to create a transitioning toolkit, something that's going to help the child or the individual to kind of transition from, start to kind of bring in that ease, some familiarity of those objects to kind of help not just with their physiological changes, but also the sensory, overwhelm, but kind of start to think, okay, this is something that I use when I go out. This is something I use when I'm sitting in the auto. And it could be something that the child enjoys, if it's something related to maths, it could be a Rubik's Cube if it's an adult, it could be like a stuffed toy or a sensory toy, a book, the popping ones, or, just a sensory blanket. The other one that you can use is a timer. So often, we'll tell families that, 10 minutes before start to say, in 10 minutes time, we are going to leave. In 10 minutes time, we're going to get ready for school. In 5 minutes, maybe you put an alarm, maybe you put a timer, and then you say, in 5 minutes, it's going to be time to go to school. But don't just say go to school. In 5 minutes, we are going to put our shoes on. We're going to walk outside the door. And then we're going to see, we're going to get into the auto. And then you're going to go to school. And in school, now when he goes to school or when the child goes to school, I think it's very important for the teachers to give at least 5 to 10 minutes of the transition time to kind of help the child ease in. So maybe they could use some transitioning tools like a favorite book or a favorite toy, and the child could be with that. And then slowly start to say, now it's time to come to, start the or start whatever the day for school is. The transitioning really needs to be taken into consideration. And the other thing that I use is social story. The social story was invented by Carol Gray, and it's a really beautiful social learning tool. And it's really about creating meaningful information exchange between not just parent and child, but parent and professionals and individuals on the autism spectrum of all ages. Social stories can be, used at any age. Say, for example, I created this social story for a young child that I was working with. And this child really struggled with change, did not like change. We had to talk about, sometimes, the weather changes. Sometimes it's sunny. Sometimes, it's cloudy. Sometimes, in nature, things change all the time. Caterpillars change into butterflies. Sometimes things change. I know we don't like change, but when there's a change, I can say to myself, things change. and I can start to get a bit more comfortable with change. There are some things which don't change, and I can hold that, with me, like my toy. My toy will always be there with me. And so you can create a story, a social story about change, any other topic that you feel that'll help the child. Again, we're trying to build social understanding, but it's not social understanding of helping not just the child to understand, what's happening, but for us to also kind of know that these are the strengths in autism. They love predictability. They need to know what's going to happen. They love things to be, to be scheduled. And so if we bring that in, that kind of supports that, we are on the same frequency and the same wavelength. There is this really beautiful book by Michelle Garcia Winner, and I would really recommend it. It's Thinking About You and Thinking About Me. It's not just thinking about you, but it's thinking about both of us. What's going on? What is that thought? We go around in the world, we're constantly making hypotheses about what the other person is thinking, feeling, what is that other person going to say, going to do. We may not always get it right, but we make assumptions all the time. And what we're trying to do is really create an environment which supports them to kind of go, now that I'm in a more emotionally regulated space, I can now think about what others are thinking. Yeah. This is a really beautiful program, again, volume of books called the We Thinkers. And, they have really lovely books for 5 to 8, 9 to 12, and then for older kids as well, for teens as well. Some of the books are like Hidden Rules and Expected and Unexpected Behavior, Social Problem Solvers, My Plan versus Group Plan. Sometimes if the child wants to do his own thing, then how can it's just, yeah, sometimes we like to do my plan, I like to do art, but sometimes it's a group plan. Sometimes we do things together. So it's just about creating these, using different resources to kind of, help with the social understanding. Now we come to supporting social emotional communication and what are the approaches. And like I said last time, social communication has an emotional component, and it doesn't have to be just words. It can be the way we talk, the voice. It can be, writing something. It could be non-verbal cues, body language, even emojis. So it can be music, art. They're all ways of communication and expression, right? So what we want to do is kind of, we want to first, something that we work on is social emotional perspective. Right. So say, for example, if we look at this picture, there is a picture of two people. This guy has got his arms, crossed in front of him. His body language is saying, I don't want to talk to you. So he's turned his head around. And she's put her head down and, her head is resting on her hands and on her knees. And so now what we do is we start to form an hypothesis. We start to go, what is this? What's really happening? Now, this person, if he really turned around to look at her, maybe he would think, oh, maybe she's put her head down. Maybe she is sad. She's upset about something. Then maybe he sees a letter on the ground and thinks, oh, maybe she's received some bad news, and kind of talks to her rather than, oh, she's put her head down. She doesn't want to talk to me. Sometimes we have to kind of try and think of what the other person is thinking and what the other person is feeling. And then we communicate based on what information or social cues we get. So it's about reading the room. It's about reading those social cues, right? So in this picture, as you can see, this person has thoughts, but sometimes people don't really say what's going on in their head. Sometimes people don't really, mean what's really going on in their head. So they may say something really nice, but in their head, they may have something else going on. And so this social interpretation is something that we can, there are some approaches that we can use to support that, to have a, kind of better understanding and awareness of how to read other people's emotions. And so before we ever go into reading other people's emotions and thoughts, we have to work on our emotions. So emotional education and in CBT is often cognitive behavior therapy is modified for people on the autism spectrum. And one of the big chunk in that modification is really focusing on emotional education. And that's a big part. Like you almost take at least 6 to 8 sessions working on affective education. So what really includes in the affective education is self-awareness. What is happening? What do I feel? When I feel this emotion, what really happens? 2 is building that emotional vocabulary. So it's not just happy, angry, sad, mad. It's like creating more and more words. See, I think it's so easy for us to sometimes just use a plethora of words. Like we'll say, sometimes, so upset with her, I was so mad with her, she really annoyed me. So we use so many words, and the better we are able to express our feelings, the better we are able to manage it, right? Because like Dr. Dan Siegel says, you name it to tame it. Then you create an emotion library. Emotion library is not just words. It could be pictures, it could be objects, but you create this bag or this resource or this library of different ways on building emotional awareness. And then finally, the last part of emotion education in CBT is what tools or strategies can we use to self-regulate? Remember, I talked about using the strengths of the individual on the autism spectrum, right? So when we think about tools, when we think about strategies, we have to think about what does this person enjoy? What does this person love? What is this person's personality? So, say for example, in my work, this is what I used to do. We, either, you can create different ways of teaching that there are a range of emotions, right? So it's not just one way. Sometimes you use just, if you're working with someone requiring level 3 support, you might just use just like 2 images, of smiley faces or a sad face. You may draw the image. You may use more movement based. So say, for example, in this parachute, you put in all these squishy toys with different emotions, and then you toss the parachute up and down. And if that squishy toy that a child catches, then they have to act out their emotion. So you can have more movement based. It doesn't have to be just, okay, name the feeling. Please don't make therapy boring. It can be made so fun. And maybe for older kids, for adolescents, you may say, let's try and guess, what is this person feeling? Oh, the person is feeling depressed or sad. Why do you think this person is sad? The head is down, they're hugging a pillow, they've crossed, the body language shows that, they're very closed. And for older adults, we can use these emotional expression cards, and we can try and guess the different feelings and try and act out those feelings so that there is more awareness, this range of feelings. The thing is that emotions change on the face very quickly. So sometimes, but we so instead of all the subtle emotions, we might just go with the more basic, more obvious emotions. Then what we do is when we get that emotion, we start to kind of work around emotion. This is an emotion pizza, as I call it. You can create an emotion pizza. And there are different slices in that pizza, So there is this happy slice, but it's not just happy. Sometimes that pizza slice is really thrilled. Sometimes there's joy, there's excitement, and sometimes you're pleased. Sometimes it's an angry pizza slice, it can be upset. I'm furious, I'm mad. Or a worried pizza slice, fearful, anxious, sad, depressed, disappointed. So you're kind of creating and building these words. And what you're doing is you're kind of just, saying that, oh, it's not just, often when you speak to autistic individuals, say, what are you feeling? Most often the answer will be, I don't know. It's not that I don't know. It's more like, yes, maybe there's alexithymia. I cannot name that emotion right now. I'm struggling to find the right word to really communicate how it is feeling for me right now, right? So we are kind of creating this vocabulary. So the next time when there is an emotion, so what are you feeling? I don't know. Let's look at a pizza, okay? Which slice do you think you are in? Are you in the happy slice? No, I'm definitely not in the happy slice. And which slice are you? And and this is more for, children, individuals requiring level 1 and level 2 support that I would use. And then you can also use you can use weather as a way to describe emotions. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes you feel really cheerful, sometimes it gets really foggy, there's this dark cloud, sometimes it's breezy, sometimes there's a storm raging, and again, we're creating different ways to kind of just build that emotion vocabulary and library as well. Then what we do is once you've got that, we start to do games with it. So yes, we've created this library, but now let's play games. Now let's do role plays, right? Let's do back and forth. So we kind of trace the words and draw a face for each emotion. We act out the emotion. We might do an emotion bingo. It's almost like housey. And then you find a matching card. You can do Play-Doh emotions for children, really little children or children requiring level 3 support. So then there's sensory play. So you can create faces and eyes and then make a smiley face, make a proud face, make a happy face, make a mad eyebrows and things like that. You can be an emotions expert, and then draw faces on it. You can make up cards and then act out and do role plays. Okay, I'm going to act out emotion, and then you choose the card and you act out, and the other person has to guess the feeling. And then it's like, oh, okay, let's do a competition. Okay, I got, and then this is the way you kind of, there is that you're creating a safe, in that safe space. And when the individual in the clinic, when you're creating the space where it's much more, maybe more exaggerated, but still it's a way of kind of saying, okay, I'm willing to kind of now work with emotion, understand emotions. And then now once we've understand, now we've got that language with emotion education, now we start to go a bit deeper. And again, this is for maybe more level children requiring level 1 or level 2 support. Worry looks different for everyone. So you normalize it. Everyone feels worried. Everyone feels happy. Everybody feels sad. Everybody feels angry sometimes. But what does your face look like when you're worried? Sometimes if you struggle, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. You always say there's no right or wrong because there's always that pressure. And then you write or draw 4 things that make you feel worried. If you find that, the individual might struggle to say, I don't know what my face looks like. I'm really struggling with this. Do you have a pet? Do you have a cat? Do you have a dog? Do you like dogs? Even if you don't have a cat or a dog? Yes, I do. What kind of a face would your dog have when your dog is worried? And that's much more easier because they're very predictable. Animals are very predictable. You write and draw 4 things that make you feel worried. What are some things that make you feel worried? And what are some ways that you express that you're worried? Okay. So you start to, and if the child doesn't want to write, you can write for them. If the child doesn't wants to draw, you can draw. If you don't, let's use music. What are some music? What are some movies that you've seen? So, there is this movie called Sing, where the elephant is really scared and she gets stage fright and cannot sing. And so then we used to watch those little YouTube clips and then talk about her. So it doesn't always have to be just you, but it could be about different things. But here you're exploring. And this is a stage of exploration. It's emotional exploration, right? And then you talk about maybe feeling happy and what does happy look like, and draw 4 things. This is one of the easiest, happy. The second thing I usually do is I don't go into worry, but I'll always go into, after feeling happy, I talk about brave. What we do is, and as we know with any therapy, you always instill the positive resources first. It's very important because ultimately when there are distressing situations, you need to pull out from your backpack those positive coping resources. You always instill the positive resources. What are some? Let's create a brave book. So I used to always make a brave book with all the children that I work with. What was something that, and even if they think it's the littlest thing, the parents would write in it, they would take photos and paste it in it, or, they would draw something in it. But that was my brave, my happy book. These are the things that I really like doing. These are the things that say that I'm brave. Say, for example, I rode my bike for the first time. That's super brave, amazing. Went on a roller coaster. You're awesome. Great job. Let's put that in your brave book. So when you create these anecdotal imagery, when you create these anecdotal books, what you're doing is you're instilling the positive resources. So when you want to talk about it in social emotional communication, we often talk about ourselves as well. You can kind of relate to the things that you can do rather than thinking about, what are some of the difficulties I have. So you really work on the strengths. Now, when we now work through this exploration, we start to put these in, we start to understand that emotions actually are like a spectrum. So they are linear, right? It's not like, oh, I feel one emotion and then I close that suitcase and I open another emotion and I close that box. It is a linear spectrum, right? So I go from feeling calm to sometimes I get really upset. You know, this could be high anxiety or it could be angry. The red is usually high anxiety or angry. You kind of, depending on, you know, once you start working with the child or the individual, you know what works for them. So you almost call it like it's like a ruler or a thermometer. We call it the emotion meter, depending on what name you want to give it. But you create these different, you know, usually up to five levels. Often, minimum is three, right? Green, yellow, red, or a traffic light. You can use a traffic light as well. But what we're really doing is now we're starting to teach the individual that, you know, just like when I talked about Dr. Dan Siegel last time, you know, you flip the lid. This is your limbic system. When your amygdala is overfiring, your prefrontal flips. Right? Now your prefrontal is offline. It's not engaging. Your upstairs brain saying, I can't deal with this. This is too much. I'm overwhelmed, right? What you want to do is kind of help to understand, if I understand my emotions better. So when my amygdala starts to, you know, activate, my thinking brain, because I'm aware of my emotions, my thinking brain most of will start to say, oh, I'm starting to get worried. My thinking brain is online. The minute I name my emotion, the minute I'm able to do something about my emotion, the minute I'm able to respond to my emotion rather than react, you know, my thinking brain is online. So when we establish this meter, and I don't know if you've heard of zones of regulation, but it's used by OTs a lot, occupational therapists, and it's really lovely. And what we do in zones of regulation is we start to understand, this is my calm zone. This is my zone when, you know, this is my yellow zone. Sometimes, yes, this is a zone where you can tell I'm getting unsettled. Last time, I think I showed you all a video and the difference between meltdowns and tantrums. And then meltdown phase, you could see when we were showing you the video, the boy was, you could see a lot of yellow behaviors. And the mom was also saying it, you know, like that's called the rumbling stage, they called it. So, you know, the child was pacing, saying stop it, was using a loud voice, was holding his, you know, covering his ears. These are the yellow behaviors. Usually, initially, what we do is we as the executive brain, or we as the calm and the safe person, we start to do like, okay, we recognize, and we say, oh, we don't have to do this now. We don't have to do this now. Okay, we start to bring in tools. Remember, we're always working with first with the physiology, right? So when you start to see an escalation, you know, talking about what's happening for you, tell me about it, is not going to work. So you start to give sensory tools. Maybe, you know, maybe if it's a cat or a dog, looking at the pictures or looking at videos of the cat and dog, maybe drawing, maybe, you know, Lego, special interest. You bring in all the special interests or the calming, sensory, soothing activities, right? Then what happens is, as you go from yellow a little higher towards that orange, you want to bring in a bit of, you know, more movement. So maybe like maybe throwing the ball, you know, a fidget ball, and not just holding it or squeezing a ball, right, or something like that. But when you're in the red zone, it's the meltdown stage. So you can't really do intervention at this stage, or you can't really do management at this stage. But what you do is you create a safe and a calm space. You know, you tell the child, I am here. You know, I'm just going to watch you and supervise you because I want to keep you safe. And you have to kind of, you know, ride the wave. That whatever is coming up has to get out, right? But the more you start to become aware as parents, as caregivers, as professionals, in looking at, you know, becoming social detectives for the yellow behaviors or the yellow zone behaviors, the better you would be to kind of stop the emotion from escalating. See, it's not a behavior management, it's an emotion management. It's very different. Behavior is something that's happening because there's an emotion underlying it, right? So we need to understand the emotion. We need to work with the emotion. The behavior is a way to tell us what's happening for the individual. So, and when we kind of work with, social communication, remember that now that we worked with the emotion regulation, now we're bringing in social communication. We want to kind of be, you're going to do a lot of role plays or practice with the therapist. Then, also have the parent in the room. I usually have parents in the room because I think that, the child lives with the parents all the time, and parents need to be involved in that social circle as well. So you kind of do, start to create these opportunities for social interaction in the clinic, and then slowly start to create groups. So initially, maybe the work may be individual, but slowly, we start to create group opportunities. So what we do is we start to practice reading social cues and becoming social detectives. Often, we'll watch videos, or maybe we'll act out the social scenario. So say, for example, the scenario could be that I am at school, and I want to sit on the swing, but there's someone else on the swing. And I push the child off the swing and I go and sit on the swing. You say, is that thumbs up behavior? Is that thumbs down behavior? And usually when the child is watching us, they're like, oh, that's a thumbs down behavior. Okay. So then we go, okay, let's do it the right way. And of course, you're not really pushing, you're just pretending. So maybe there's a stuffed toy or something. And then, you go back in and you say, okay, and you stand there and say, turn, please. Okay. So is that thumbs up or thumbs down? Absolutely. And then the therapist says, okay, and walks away, and then you go and sit on the swing. So you create different scenarios, and parents will usually tell you, parents will come up with 3 or 4 scenarios. We go to someone's house, and my child is just, clicking the switch up and down. This is a social scenario. What do we do? So we kind of do a social story. You prepare the child. You may take something which has that, that kind of a toy that has that same, can't remember the name, but like the puppet ones and things like that. Or you say, when we go to someone's house, we don't really flick the switch, but when we come to a house, we can probably do it or something like that. But then you start to kind of do role plays in the room, and then and then you keep practicing it. Then you also, you're trying to solve the social challenges. And when you're solving social challenges, because social interaction is challenging. You're trying to not only guess what the person is thinking, feeling, but then you have to change your own behavior, your own way of approaching the other person and communicating what words to choose. And we do it so fast sometimes, isn't it? We don't even really think. It feels like that, but there is so much happening. And so we're really trying to, you start to give these social cards and saying these are the different scenarios. Say, for example, you are at school, and it's really loud, and the child next to you is making this loud sound. It's really annoying you. What would you do? Let's act it out. Okay. What would you say? What would be an okay thing to say? What would be an unhelpful thing to say? How would you start to create this backpack? How would you cope with stress and overwhelm in a social situation? Again, just don't work on social communication, like, make eye contact, or, ask questions. And it's quite, rather than that, you're kind of working on, okay, so what would you do in that situation when you're feeling overwhelmed? How are you going to manage the stress? And so you're practicing and practicing. So in a group therapy approach, say, for example, if I'm working with children, young children, or children who are very, like sensory things or movement based, we might do like a small mini Play-Doh group, and it's about then exchanging Play-Doh or making things. Maybe they are right now, there's no interaction where like, can I have the blue Play-Doh, please? Can I have the green Play-Doh? And creating things, maybe creating your own things with support from your parents, but at least there is that interaction. Or, playing cards. Again, it's very structured. There are rules for card games. And then, so there is nothing surprising except that this is how the game is played. But at the same time, you're creating opportunities for social interaction. One of the games that I really like is Dungeons and Dragons. And if you have not watched the Dungeons and Dragons new movie, you must watch it. It is amazing. And D&D is an amazing way to bring about social interactions, solving social challenges, but it's a cooperative game. There's no competition in D&D, but we are all working together towards that shared goal. When you watch the movie, you'll understand, but that's something that we'll often introduce. So, like I said, there are different ways to teach the same concept. Don't just, create one social story and say, okay, now we've talked about turn taking and that's done. No, now that you've done turn taking, you've created a social story, now let's practice it. Let's make a video and let's watch ourselves doing it. Let's watch maybe something on YouTube. You may find, a book that talks about turn taking. You may, use puppets to teach about turn taking. You may, do some imaginary play with toys about turn taking. The different ways to teach the same concept. And you also talk about there are some hidden rules. There are some rules, like say, for example, you don't really push someone. Yeah, for some reason, that's not really something that, is liked. Would you like it if someone pushed you? Don't really push someone, or we don't really start to say please, please, please. We kind of say, okay, in 5 minutes, can I have a turn? And it's 5 minutes. And if you think that person's not listening to you, ask your teacher, you ask your parent for help. So we create all these plan A, plan B, plan C, but to work around that concept. There are different books that teach social emotional intelligence. Saying for example, I found this website, 50 children books that teach social emotional intelligence, and they're really beautiful books. You all can have a look at them. The Color Monster, Being Kind, The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes, Big Feelings. But again, it's social emotional. So this is the new thing that we really need to think about emotion and social communication together. So this was just a really quick rundown. There's so much more, but just post-reflection, what is your understanding of social emotional communication? That was the question I asked you. Has it changed since, you watched this presentation? What do you think is the role of emotions in communication? What approaches can you think of to support social emotional communication goals with some of the clients that you're working with? And what resources do you use in your clinic? And do you think there are some resources that, which I have shared that you could use? I'll give you another 2 minutes and then. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you once again for being with us today. Nice presentation, really nice presentation. Over to chairpersons for their opening remarks.
Lokesh, would you like to say something?
Sure, sir, actually. Firstly, I'd like to thank my dear friend Aleem and Amrit, actually, for giving this opportunity. And honestly, I've been promoting this Thursday musing among all the postgraduates and those who have been not able to attend CMEs. They have been very impressed by this because they get to speak to the most renowned, dreamt, psychiatrists or the teachers. Right on, they can actually talk to them, they can message them. And according to me, this is like the next famous show after Kapil Sharma show. among the, because 139 episodes to continue, it's an amazing, actually, success. And coming to the presentation, it was very fluid and it was like, as Radhika herself mentioned. Now I can understand why Bhavya is like upset she left Nagpur and went to Australia, because the fluidity, that understanding, and the emotional connectedness also, which was amazing. And also, like, I always used to feel like autistic means like it is nothing I can do in my clinic. Now there is opportunity, like after listening to the simplistic form of it, what can be done in my own clinical setup, involving books, creating a library for children, and teaching parents about the academic vocabulary, I mean, emotional library building techniques. These are amazing feedbacks which I received. And the slides were so mesmerizing and so simplistic to understand. It's a wonderful presentation. And thank you very much for making me a part.
Oh, thank you.
Over to you, sir.
Right. I think I quite echo what Dr. Lokesh Babu said just now. That was simply wonderful, Radhika. Thanks a lot for that. I mean, we clinicians, I think we find two major kinds of problems when it comes to autism. Firstly, the training in the management of various aspects of autism is far from, optimum in our country. And secondly, even if someone does get trained, for a clinical psychiatrist to give that amount of time, spend that much time with the children, with the families, even if he or she knows the nitty-gritty of how to go about it, I think it's not easy. So almost always we need the help of clinical psychologists or an occupational therapist who would help us with these kind of things. So thank you very much, Radhika, for all these wonderful educational inputs. There's are quite a few questions. Lokesh, would you like to throw them to Radhika?
Actually, one question I have is what is the role of, like, recently we have been seeing like polyvagal therapy or something like that. Is there any role, because it is concerned with the vagal nerve and the autonomic?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, sir, I can talk about this for hours because that's what my PhD theoretical framework was. And I talked about this last time. I talked about the polyvagal because it is so important to understand. And Dr. Stephen Porges basically talked about the polyvagal theory. And what he says is that the understanding is, yes, the vagus nerve or the wanderer nerve, which is a part of the autonomic nervous system. And they realize it's not just that there is a sympathetic nervous system in the autonomic nervous system and parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. But there are two parts to your parasympathetic. One is your ventral vagal system, and the other is your dorsal vagal system, which is when there is shutdown or freeze. So what happens is, because it's a hierarchical model, if you're in your shutdown phase or in the dorsal vagal, then the sympathetic arousal system shuts down, that's offline, and the ventral, which is your social connected system, goes offline. If you're in your fight or flight, then the shutdown, which is your dorsal is offline and your ventral is offline. And what the ventral is a autonomically governed social engagement system. And this is why I started Social Space Community, because I realized that if I am in a physiological state where my heart rate variability is high, then what happens is my ventral vagal system is on, which means, and ventral vagal system is really your vagus nerve, is your middle ear. It's connected to your jaws, your eyes, your larynx, pharynx, your heart, your lungs, and your digestive system, right? So when you're creating an environment that brings about a sense of safety, when there is co-regulations, if the parent is calm, the child is calm, you're using a prosody in your voice, you start to activate the vagus system. The minute the vagus system comes into ventral, there is more chances for social connection and social engagement. And it is spontaneous. It's amazing. It's brilliant. And that's why mindfulness or, yoga-based techniques, which Dr. Porges talks about as well, bottom-up approaches works really well. And he says that in autism, it's the sensory, the rocking, the stimming. these behaviors kind of regulate the vagus nerve. So we shouldn't really, it's not about stopping it, rather we need to kind of recognize it. So yeah, I love that question. So, so I think we need to really keep in mind the polyvagal understanding, and there is so much that I can talk about, but yeah.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from Vivek Kirpekar, sir. He congratulates you on the presentation. And the query is, when should we start emotional regulations, and what should be the speed? A child with autism may not be that receptive.
Yes. So you start at, again, depending on the level of support, but you start at the very, I have started in our clinic, which started at the age of 4. So, and at the age of 4, it was more just talking about different feelings, like maybe drawing them or using Play-Doh, but it was just simple things that we were doing. And then we would say, we would use puppets and we say, oh, this puppet is really sad. What can this puppet do when he's feeling sad? And, the kids would give something. It doesn't have to be a 1-hour session. It could be just, the same repetitive, but a lot of repetition, absolutely. So the same concept, we used to teach the same concept from maybe 4 to 12. The same concept was taught, but depending on the child's level of special interest, we used to change it. So if it was Minecraft, then I would talk about, oh, sometimes the lava goes up, but you want to change the lava into obsidian. What would you do? Yes, in Minecraft, you put water, but what would you do for your own emotions? The things that you kind of start to, or in Pokemon, what would you do? You use the special interest, but you can start at the age of 4 in very gentle ways. There is a book that Dr. Michelle Garnett and Julia Cook and Louise Ford have written, and it's called Fun with Feelings. So it's a really lovely book, and you can really work with children from age of 4. And it is basically CBT-based model.
Thank you.
Radhika, there's a question. Do the usual emotional regulation techniques work for autistic children?
The usual emotion regulation techniques work, but they have to be modified in terms of you have to really build that affective education. In that moment, I'm not, if you tell me to use something, I can't, because if my upstairs brain is offline, it's not going to work. But rather that practice has to be in that calm space till it becomes a habit. So it has to be a more habitual thing. And so what you modify is you start to use, you create a sensory, you create a toolkit, as Tony Atwood talks about. You create a toolkit for emotion regulation. And those toolkits are, maybe there'll be visuals, maybe there are 5 things that you use and only the 5 go-to things. So it could be things like music, that's what I do. Maybe playing, watching a Minecraft video, that's what I do. Then you have that. But you kind of start to know as a parent that, oh, it takes you at least 20 minutes to kind of start to de-escalate. And so, I am not much into devices. I try to keep away from devices, but devices is more when I start to feel that, the thinking brain has started to come online, then I'll start to use devices, but not as, just to kind of, not a babysitter.
Right. Then there's a question. Is there any manual for teaching emotional education for autistic spectrum disorders?
Yes. So Tony Atwood has created, and I keep talking about Tony because Tony, and I've worked with Tony for almost 10 years, and he's created a resource. He's created lots of books about exploring feelings, exploring anxiety, and exploring anger. So I would look into Tony Atwood's website. There are lots of resources there. Dr. Michelle Garnett, she's got lots of books on CBT-based books. I would also look for like the zones of regulation. That's a really lovely one, even though OTs use it, but we can use it as well. For building interoceptive cues, there is Kelly Mahler's program, which is called the interoceptive program, and it's really brilliant again. It's about what do my eyes do, what does my mouth do, what does my heart do, when I'm feeling a certain emotion. So it really goes into understanding the physiology, but you would use it more with children, maybe with level needing level 1 or level 2 support.
Then there's a question, how these social communication therapeutic approaches would differ for younger children aged 2 to 6 with speech difficulty.
2 to 3. 2 to 3 is really
2 to 6. It says 2 to 6 years with speech difficulty, an added challenge.
I think when you're that young, especially, and if there is, language difficulties, then it's the parent or the caregiver. It's about, building that shared, remember I talked about shared vocabulary. That's very important, that you talk on the same frequency. And so maybe getting that, speech therapist help, you're creating resources that kind of support that. So it could just be, like just your kind of, I think you have to tell the parents, here you have to be the executive brain. You have to be kind of understand and recognize what works for my child, what doesn't work for my child. The parent has to understand the yellow zone behaviors. When my child is going into getting emotionally escalate, there's escalation happening, they're starting to pick on their skin, or they're starting to hit themselves, or they're starting to, maybe start to pace around the room. And I know at this point in time that if I give a glass of water, or maybe if I just sit and give a tight hug to my child, or put a sensory blanket on my child, that really helps. So it's about you're teaching the parent these zones of regulation, or the picking up on the yellow behaviors, and that's very important, those subtle behaviors changes.
Thanks for that. Then there's a question. We have a child with ASD, 11-year-old boy. He seems to show a lot of fluctuation in emotions from being low to being high. How do we work on that?
Yes. So in autism, we'll often see that there is a 0 to 10 very quickly. It's not 0, 1, 2, 3, but 0 to 10. There's a sudden explosion. It's like, where did that come from? But it hasn't really, it was probably building up, but we haven't noticed it. And there was something. Often, that is why I drive anxiety so much, because I really feel that anxiety, for some children on the autism spectrum, it's the externalizing behaviors. For some, it's the internalizing behaviors. And so, again, like I said, for that 11-year-old, you're slowly building that emotional vocabulary. You're starting to keep those things, resources around the room to say, I think. Initially, you could say, I think. You're starting to get a little upset. That's okay. Let's go and play with let's look at your Minecraft books, or let's read this book. Let me read to you. Do you want to listen to music right now? And you start to do those things. And then you start to, when the child is calm, you start to work around emotions. You start to read books about emotions. You maybe, you watch the movie Inside Out, and you talk about the emotions there and what's happening in this, and what's joy, what's fear, what's disgust. And then slowly building that conversation of emotion. But the most important thing is parents are the first role models of behaviors or emotional regulation. So what I would encourage, that's why I used to get parents into the room. And, I would say, so mom, what do you do when you get upset? And the mom would say, oh, I just take 4 deep breaths. Really? Shall we watch mom do her 4 deep breaths? And, the mom would take 4 deep breaths. Dad, what do you do when you get upset? And the parents have to actually demonstrate that in front of the child, what they do to manage their own emotions and how they stay calm. And I think that's the children really learn.
Lokesh, would you like to ask more questions? Lokesh, could you unmute yourself? You are muted.
It's okay, sir. Can carry. I mean, the questions which are existing are already asked, those questions?
I mean, those that are existing that you can see in the chat box. I think there are more, maybe 2, 3 more.
Okay, there's one question actually says that how to get across with the ASD plus comorbid severe ID.
I think in that case, again, you would work more through, I really feel, on body movement based therapy. So like occupational therapy, keeping it very simple, but you're using different ways through movement to kind of bring about an self, like, awareness of, where my body is in space. And then, like, say, for example, recognizing on how to kind of regulate myself when, I'm in a space that that I'm not familiar with. So there is one question there which I thought I should answer, because there is a question someone's asked about meltdown. And I would like to say that, last time I did speak about meltdown versus tantrum, and I'll say it again. Meltdown is when your coping resources, when the demands have exceeded capacity, and there's sensory overwhelm, there's social overwhelm, there's academic overwhelm, there's emotional overwhelm. And now you're saying to the child, come on, do some strategies. It's not going to work. When the child is in the red zone, when the individual is in the red zone, the idea is to create it's almost like a streamline method. What's going to happen? Okay, we maybe take the child to the room, let the child maybe keep some things that are safe, making sure the child is safe, supervising the child, saying, I know you're really upset. Mom's just going to be here till you feel better when mommy's here. Okay. And the parents need to stay calm. But of course, the more you work, you do the CBT approach, you start to the meltdowns start to go down, because the person is able, because self-awareness is the best way to kind of manage emotions.
Okay.
There are a few more questions, but I think it's 9:30. So Aleem, do we wind up now?
Yes. It's 2 o'clock here, 2 a.m.
Yeah. If you allow a few silly questions, Radhika, suppose we forget all we have discussed. So what is basically social communication therapeutic tool in 1 or 2 lines in autism?
So social emotional communication therapeutic approach would be recognizing the strengths, recognizing the potentials, but first about an understanding the autistic person that you're working with, and then creating an environment that supports emotion regulation, and then building in tools or strategies to kind of teach the social rules, or the build social understanding and perspective.
So in mild, moderate, severe persons, it will differ widely, the approach,
Yeah, like I said in my presentation, so level 1, level 2, requiring level 1, level 2, level 3 support. You would use, for level 3, you would use more movement. You would use more simple things. For children, maybe for requiring level 2 or level 1 support, you would use things like, what is it that makes me feel happy? What can I do? Maybe being a social detective, playing role play games, and then kind of doing things like, let's talk about social problem solving, let's talk about challenges and how we can manage that, and maybe having group programs as well.
So child has to be trained, the caregivers, the parents have to be trained.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand.
And among all the approaches of autism treatment, autism management, we can say, how much share does this have? Should it have, out of the whole pie? How much part of this intervention, this sort of intervention play?
A big part. Emotion regulation. I think we used to work with emotion regulation all the time. And that social emotional learning is one of the biggest things that you can really bring about and cultivate. Because the better social emotional understanding I have, the better I'm able to respond, better my ability to manage stress, better my coping. And when I'm coping better, I'm able to socially engage better. When I'm able to socially engage better, then I can thrive. Okay. I would say it's a big part. But of course, remember that you don't work in isolation. You work with the occupational therapists. They do the same thing. They do zones of regulation. The speechy will also come in. The speechy might do something on emotions, but using, speech cards or something like that. So everyone works in the same concept, but together.
And we can use it on regular persons also.
On neurotypicals as well, yes.
Unusual. So I can use it on Amrit, you mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
I think we all need to learn it.
Right. Actually, there are a few more questions. I can see a raised hand, but I think we need to finish because we have slightly crossed the time. So Radhika, thanks a lot. I mean, it was simply wonderful. I mean, in 45 minutes, 1 hour, you told the things which were was new for us and very nice. Any comments from Lokesh?
Actually, there's seems like it's insight into the autistic disorder as it is a autistic awareness month. So it's a wonderful program to be held on this session, and of course there will be thousands of questions because for us it's a kind of a new exposure from a psychological perspective about. Radhika made it very simple that we know on the ground level it would take a lot of tolerance, not only with the child, also along with the parents in our Indian system actually. So thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and the opportunity to Dr. Halim and Amrit sir and Thopan sir.
Much.
Thank you. Tofan sir? Sir,
Yes, I'm there.
thank
I'm
you
in
for
a different setup. I am here. I'm not out.
Very-
I've been very intently listening to what has been told, but I'm very much. We are always intruding into her sleep. We're taking her sleep off. And thank you very much. It was also equally elaborate, equally simplistic. But again, the same question. Where do we find the manpower who are really experts in this technology of interfering with the managing children with ASD? And how they can become, if one wants, how can one become trained? Officially trained so that one can call, yes, I am trained.
And that
Or
is
one
the
can
thing. So, yeah, it's the train the trainer approach. I learn, I pass it on, they pass it on. It's train the trainer approach. And that's what works. And there are so many schools in India that work with individuals on autism spectrum. So, and they're already intuitively they're doing these things. So it's about connecting, having a community approach, which I was saying last time. And of course, as psychiatrists as well, we need you all because sometimes you need medications, so absolutely it is having that collective approach and it's not just one man show.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Have a good sleep and happy dinner to everyone. And over to Amrit. And this landmark episode we had launched the YouTube and you are there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Over to Amrit.
So thank you so much. You waited. Radhika, thank you. Special thank you to you. It's 2 o'clock. It's early. It's almost late evening for us. It's early morning for you. So thank you for taking a nap, getting up and waiting. We had some technical glitches for the opening of the YouTube channel, but you waited patiently. Thank you so much again. You charted through difficult waters, but you charted very well. I think it opens a new area in terms of looking at autistic children. That's very important. It's not just high functioning. Everybody is high functioning, low functioning, whatever you might term it as, but everybody has their plus points, has strengths, and that's where we need to look at them, not at what we can't do. So there are different methods, different ways, and you have shown us some new ways. I think Alim will learn something out of it. Thank you, Sudhir sir. Sudhir sir was so excited to see Radhika, and that shows that how much he really misses you and how much he liked you when you were a resident. Lokesh Bhai, the smartest psychiatrist down south after me actually, and he was wonderful. Alim, thank you again for pushing us to open the YouTube channel, and Tufan sir for executing. You saw the lamps and all; it was so beautiful. That was so nice, so culturally acceptable, and we could do it from here. That was wonderful. With so many people who have been supporting us, and with the YouTube channel, we want to expand it. A lot of people were asking for the channels, and Tufan sir, Alim sir have really pushed the technical team, and thank you to the technical team also who could make it happen. We wanted to edit it and all that, but that was too big a thing. So we have posted everything. Maybe later on we can do things about it. Special thanks to Rucha and Sharda actually for the autistic, the whole month celebration that's going on. They've devised it. They've thought about the speakers. So that's a special thanks to them. Thank you IPS Odisha State Bank. Thank you Shekhar sir and Gautam sir who have been our go-to man whenever we need it. Sudhir sir has been guiding us. A lot of people, a lot of senior people, I'm seeing faces, Ruma is there. A lot of people are there who have been encouraging us, making us go ahead again. 139 episodes is not something small or insignificant, Keeping when the COVID is out, everything, still we are having audience of 250, 300. It's tough, and it has been really a special. We should take a special clap for ourselves also. We need to celebrate it together. So thank you everybody. Thank you for,
Gotcha.
and you've always chosen fresh faces. We have made it very apolitical. We wanted new topics, new people who have come up, shown the right path, and it has been a very successful model. And I think thank you everybody again from the core of our heart. Please keep on encouraging us, coming, getting involved, giving us new topics, and we would really appreciate that. Good night. Have a happy weekend.
Like and subscribe to the channel.
Like and subscribe to our channel if you really like us. अलीम तू थोड़ा कम बोलता है तो सब्सक्रिप्शन बढ़ जाता है हमारा, but ठीक है. You have to tolerate certain things. Strengths and the minuses. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Closing the meeting now.
Yeah, please do close.